Alien is undoubtedly one of the greatest films ever made. Masterfully directed, claustrophobic, and resoundingly inventive in its design, the film has aged incredibly well and has influenced countless works in the 40 years since its release. It is unarguably one of the most tense and terrifying cinema experiences in history, and the story of its production is often as intriguing as the film itself. There's plenty of tales of Alien's strange original ending, and Ridley Scott's innovative work with the small cast reaching legendary status in Hollywood. Most infamous is that of the chestburster scene, and how its grisly reveal caused Veronica Cartwright to descend into hysterics and Yaphet Kotto to lock himself in his room for the rest of the shooting day. But there are so many more to dive into, from shared universe reveals through potential casting changes to some truly bizarre design and plotting ideas that thankfully never saw the light of day. There is no end to the fascinating facts circulating around Alien and its 4-decade legacy. In that case then, I'm Ash from the Nostromo, What Culture, and these are 25 things you didn't know about Alien. 25. Yaphet Kotto was instructed to annoy Sigourney Weaver on set. It's common knowledge that a lot of moments in Alien were reliant on improvisation, and certain production details were withheld from the cast to give the film a sense of authenticity. However, beyond the big moments, a lot of subtleties went on behind the scenes as well. One such example is the relationship between Sigourney Weaver and Yaphet Kotto, who played the Nostromo's prickly chief engineer, Dennis Parker. It was a convincing dynamic, and there's good reason for it. Kotto was instructed by Ridley Scott to deliberately annoy Weaver off camera in order to add the tension between their characters. It was evidently effective, as Ripley and Parker show a very believable on-screen enmity. 24. The creature effects were created using real organic material. Even 40 years on, there is something impressively and terrifyingly realistic about many of Alien's creature effects, especially in comparison to comparatively rubbery-looking props and creatures from films of the same era. And that is because the alien eggs, the facehugger, and the chestburster were all made to look believable by using a variety of real organic materials. The dead facehugger was made using shellfish and sheep kidneys. Lots of animal guts were fired at the cast for the chestburster scene, and the interior of the alien egg was made from cattle hearts and stomachs with a sheep's intestine for the facehugger tube. Imagine how the set must have smelt under all of those studio lights. 23. Harrison Ford turned down the role of Dalits. Before Tom Skerritt landed the role as the Nostromo's doomed captain, it was offered to the now legendary Harrison Ford. Ford turned the role down, however, and although the reason has never officially been stated, it is likely that having just recently starred in a little-known space opera called Star Wars or something, that he wanted to avoid being typecast. Despite speculation that his star power may well have influenced those who survived to the end of the film, it was actually Skerritt who was more famous at the time, so this is unlikely. Ford would go on to work with Ridley Scott just a few years later, starring in the cult favourite film Blade Runner. Not too good for more sci-fi now, are we, Ford? 22. The alien's acidic blood was an afterthought during writing. One aspect of the alien's design that makes it so memorable, iconic, and deadly is its highly acidic blood. One small spillage of which manages to melt through 2 floors of the Nostromo. However, the script was mostly complete before this detail was added. Screenwriter Dan O'Bannon, when revising the script, was struggling to find a reason that the crew wouldn't just shoot the alien with a gun. Though surely the fact that the Nostromo is a freight vessel with no guns on board would have sufficed. It was conceptual artist Ron Cobb who suggested the acidic blood, as retaliation would put the crew in jeopardy. And thus, one of the alien's greatest features was born. 21. The facehugger was originally going to be green. When finalising the props for shooting, the facehugger was initially intended to be painted green, most likely in keeping with the prevailing stereotype of aliens being green. However, Dan O'Bannon caught sight of the unpainted facehugger prop on set and found its human flesh coloured tone inventive and effective. He argued for it to remain as is, and the rest of the crew agreed. This was undoubtedly the right decision, as the recognisable flesh tones of the creature, despite its almost eldritch shape and anatomy, add a familiarity that makes it all the more eerie. 20. 20th Century Fox doubled the budget on the strength of the storyboards. Whilst 20th Century Fox endlessly mulled over Alien's budget, Ridley Scott got incredibly bored of waiting, so he decided to storyboard the entire film in the meantime. The storyboards were influenced by the work of famed French comic book artist artist Mobius, and were absolutely stunning. Upon sending them to Fox, the studio was so impressed that they doubled their initial budget of $4.2 million to $8.4 million, as Scott's vision was so clear and well realized. Mobius subsequently contributed work to the film, designing in particular the Nostromo crew attire and spacesuits, which were recreated almost exactly as is. 19. Sigourney Weaver was almost recast because of 4 cat superstars. On the first day that Sigourney Weaver shot a scene alongside Jones the cat, she began reacting extremely badly, her skin itching and breaking out in a rash, leading her to a fear that she may be allergic to cats. As Jones was actually played by 4 different but identical looking cats, each of which fulfilled different dramatic roles, the crew felt it would be easier to just recast Ripley than to find another 4 identical cats that could do their job as well as these ones. Luckily, it transpired that Weaver was not allergic to cats at all, and the reaction was due to glycerin sprayed on her skin to simulate sweat. 18. 20th Century Fox almost didn't allow the Space Jockey scene to be made. Among Alien's many striking visual moments, one that especially stands out is the early Space Jockey scene, in which 3 Nostromo crew members come across the gigantic remains of an alien pilot in a grand funeral chamber. It is one of the most impressive and effective shots in the entire film, but 20th Century Fox almost stopped it from happening. Their reasoning was simple. At the time, film props were never this large, and with the set only appearing briefly, this would drive the budget up unnecessarily. Ron Cobb managed to convince the studio that this would be the film's Cecil B. DeMille shot, and would set the film apart from low-budget fare. 17. Ridley Scott's sons feature in the Space Jockey scene. While the Space Jockey scene was ultimately allowed by 20th Century Fox, the artists on the film did use one particularly nifty trick to reduce the cost of the massive prop. The Space Jockey, despite looking absolutely massive, is not quite as big as one might think. The jockey was built on a smaller scale than its design, and rather than have John Hurt, Veronica Cartwright, and Tom Skerritt shoot against the prop, Ridley Scott's 2 sons and the child of another crew member were used instead, wearing scaled-down replicas of the crew's spacesuits. 16. Not a single image of the alien was released before the film's premiere. In the run-up to the film's release, the nature of the titular alien and its appearance were kept strictly under wraps, withheld entirely from audiences. It doesn't show up in the original theatrical trailer, and not one single photograph was allowed to be released to the public. Not even Alan Dean Foster, tasked with writing the novelization, was shown any material. This maintains the shock value intended for the audience, and the alien's grotesque, barely humanoid appearance caused widespread horror. Its design at the time was unlike any previous cinematic extraterrestrial, and remains unique and iconic to this day. 15. H.R. Giger was furious at his lack of credit for Alien Resurrection. Despite his well-deserved status as a legendary and influential artist, H.R. Giger is arguably most famous for his work in designing Alien's iconic creatures and much of the extraterrestrial architecture seen throughout the film. His work endured throughout the franchise, with all the film's sequels taking further influence from his original designs. However, in 1997, 18 years after Alien's release, Giger sent a furious letter to 20th Century Fox for failing to credit him for his Alien designs, claiming the designs were closer to his originals than what was seen in Aliens and Alien 3. He wished upon the studio an alien breeding inside their chests. Ick. 14. Attempts were made to make the alien transparent. The filmmaker's original plan for the alien was for it to be transparent, or at least translucent if that was all they could manage. This would have reflected its status as an elusive creature, stalking its prey before they could possibly catch sight of it. Unfortunately, attempting to cook the molds was a disaster, and with the deadline looming, the crew decided to give it a dark tone instead. Coincidentally, the idea was a direct influence on the camouflage technology used by the titular monster from 1987's Predator, with which Alien is part of a shared universe. 13. Balaji Buddy Joe beat Peter Mayhew to the part of the alien. After deciding against using animatronics for the alien and settling on the classic guy-in-a-suit method, the part eventually went to Balaji Buddy Joe, a 7-foot-tall graphic design student that the crew spotted in a pub. His skinny frame and long limbs were just what was needed to give the alien its trademark insect-like appearance. However, the part nearly went to Peter Mayhew, who just 2 years earlier had played a certain Star Wars furry alien sidekick. Considering Harrison Ford could have played Dalits as well, it would have made for a very strange alternate universe indeed to see Chewie murdering Han in Event. 12. Not a single character's gender was predetermined by the script. Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett included a clause indicating that all characters were unisex, meaning they could be cast with either men or women. This allowed them to write the script without any preconceptions about gender roles and any limitations they might impose. This explains why throughout the entire film, the characters only ever refer to one another by their surnames, with their first names not revealed until the inquest into the Nostromo incident early on in Aliens. However, one particular character was always intended to be male. 11. The filmmakers originally wanted to avoid having a lone female survivor. Despite Ellen Ripley's status as one of the most iconic female characters in cinema, Dan O'Bannon and Ronald Shusett originally wanted her character to be male. The final girl trope was already becoming a horror movie cliche with the likes of Laurie Strode in 1978's Halloween, and the writers wanted to avoid falling back on this trope. Luckily, Sigourney Weaver's screen test was so impressive that she was given the role of Ripley, and the character defies the stereotype of the meek, virginal final girl with a resourcefulness and great strength of character. 10. The alien was originally planned to be sexually aroused by Ripley. Ridley Scott had originally envisioned the final scenes of the film very differently. According to Scott, Ripley was originally going to be completely naked when hiding in the escape shuttle's closet. The alien would spot her and examine her through the glass, and begin touching itself with a mixture of arousal and curiosity, as if comparing its own body to hers. That idea was very thankfully scrapped. Years later, Scott considered the idea again when developing Prometheus, imagining a similar scene with Charlize Theron's Meredith Vickers. Once again, the scene was ultimately scrapped. Lay off it, Scott, you pervert. 9. Alien shares a universe with Blade Runner. Not only is Alien part of a shared universe with the Predator franchise, but Ridley Scott also has stated that Blade Runner is also shared with the film. In a 2012 interview, Scott described Blade Runner's vision of Los Angeles as the city that supports the crew that go out in Alien. He further theorized that the Nostromo crew might go into this place and go into a bar on a street near where Deckard lives. Whilst no explicit links exist in any of the films, it is a fascinating little bit of world building tying Scott's two greatest works together. 8. The cast thought John Hurt was really dying during the chestburster scene. The chestburster scene is infamous for the cast being largely in the dark about just what was going to happen to Kane, and their horrified reactions are entirely genuine. However, earlier in the scene, the actors genuinely feared for John Hurt's life. When the Nostromo crew sit down to eat in the mess hall, Kane begins choking and then convulsing violently, and the others fly into a panic. Sigourney Weaver stated in an interview that his performance came on so naturally that she and the other cast members genuinely thought he had choked or was having a violent allergic reaction and may have been about to die in front of them. 7. When hiding in the shuttle, the alien is not trying to hunt Ripley. Many viewers see the alien's appearance in the escape shuttle in the final scene as its final move at successfully outsmarting Ripley and continuing to hunt its prey. However, a supplementary making-of book and some statements from Ridley Scott suggest otherwise. It has been noted that the alien's colour changes from translucent grey to black over the course of the film, signifying a process of aging and dying. Having successfully created new hosts, albeit ones that were incinerated by Ripley, it is likely that the alien was in fact looking for a quiet spot in which to die. Backing this up is how it doesn't immediately attack Ripley. It only does so once provoked. 6. You Are My Lucky Star cost the studio a lot of money. During the shuttle scene, Ripley sings You Are My Lucky Star, a song which gained popularity from its inclusion in Singing in the Rain, whilst preparing to blast the alien out into space for good. This was actually an idea from Sigourney Weaver, who felt that the romantic lyrics in the song's chorus were in stark contrast to her relationship with the alien. Despite the effectiveness of this moment and how much more iconic it is thanks to the song's inclusion, after shooting the scene, 20th Century Fox were unhappy with the decision as it required them to fork out a large sum for the song's rights. 5. Scott suggested having an adult and 2 children strapped together to play the alien. At some point between deciding against an animatronic model for the alien and ultimately casting Balaji Buddy Joe to fill the suit, Ridley Scott had some, interesting ideas about how to bring the creature to life. One such idea was to strap 2 children together and then strap them to an adult, wrapping them in rubber for the alien's skin. It is difficult to imagine what this could possibly have looked like, but it's probably safe to say that such a monstrous interpretation of a pantomime horse would not have been anything as effective as Buddy Joe's portrayal of the iconic creature. 4. The Nostromo deck sets were almost entirely one piece. When constructing the Nostromo set, the crew built the ship's various corridors and tunnels almost exactly as can be seen in the film, closed off with very little in the way of openings or light. This meant that to navigate the set, the actors had to move through it much like their characters would on the real ship itself. This immersion in the enclosed, dingy environment of the Nostromo added to a palpable feeling of claustrophobia and realism for the actors, which translates directly to the film itself. Yaphet Kotto, standing at 6'4", was too tall for much of the cramped set and had to stoop through doors and certain hallways. 3. The Space Jockey model was vandalized at the film's premiere. Alien's opening weekend event was quite the sight to behold. Entering Grauman's Egyptian theatre, moviegoers were treated to props from the film, such as alien eggs and even the full-size Space Jockey set piece, and walked through a portion of the Nostromo's corridors to get to the cinema screen. Sadly, on the second or third night, the Space Jockey was destroyed. Religious zealots set it ablaze, believing the horror to be the work of the devil. Worse was the fact that this was the very same prop seen in the film's own scene. It was a tragic end for one of Alien's most memorable and impressive pieces of imagery. 2. The Alien has only 4 minutes of screen time. One of Alien's great strengths was how it effectively limited the alien's screen time whilst managing to remain tense and terrifying. The monster is rarely seen and is never shown in full or with clear lighting, frequently obscured, lurking in the shadows, or shown in extreme close-up. The fact that it only seems to appear moments before a kill solidifies its status as a stealthy hunter. With this known, totting up the alien's on-screen presence is still surprising. Over the film's 117-minute runtime, the creature appears for a grand total of only 4 minutes, and doesn't make an appearance until around the 1 hour mark. 1. A 2019 high school stage production of the film was a huge hit. Earlier in 2019, students at North Bergen High School in New Jersey adapted the film into a play. Despite having no budget at all, its production values were incredibly impressive, with the alien costume in particular replicating the original design almost perfectly. Ridley Scott caught wind of the production through social media and was so impressed by the idea that he donated money to the school to allow them to put on an encore performance. Sigourney Weaver attended and surprised the cast and crew backstage, much to their elation. The sheer fact that 40 years after its original release, the film still retains its influence is proof of its importance in cinema history. And that's our list. What other alien facts belong up here? Which one is your favourite? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. I've been Ash and this has been What Culture. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe and come back again soon for some more spine-tingling horror content. Thanks for watching.